Road to Mandalay. A young man and woman flee from Burma, making their way to Bangkok in search of new horizons. When they get there, she immediately gets menial work in a kitchen. This is the second film of the week in which the really, really tough coal face of working is working in a kitchen. And she's working very long hours for money, which she immediately wires back home. She wants better work because she's clearly, intelligent and able. But the problem is she can't get it without getting papers. And in order to get papers, you basically have to start dealing with people who are massively untrustworthy. And although you kind of know from the beginning that when she starts getting into this process of who do I have to see, which official do I have to bribe, how do I have to do this to get papers, you know that essentially she's getting into a sort of quagmire of you pay for things, they don't turn up, you pay for things, they don't turn up. And gradually she becomes more and more demoralized and desperate for any way to make money. And the film is kind of like a bitter love story. There's a young man who is in love with her and can't understand why it is that she's so desperate for papers and why it is that she has ambitions beyond simply working in the factory. It's realistic in terms of its nuts and bolts portrayal of the dispossessed existence. I mean, the factory scenes will be worthy of Ken Loach, people who have, no rights, being hideously exploited, having to take amphetamines to work the long hours, and then, being caught up in machinery which is not really fit for being used by workers in this unsafe fashion. There's also, however, something more adventurous to it. There is a scene in which Dang Xing, our central character, finds herself preyed upon, and the scene, it suddenly goes into this extremely surreal and actually rather brilliantly expressionist fantasy sequence involving sort of lizard transformation. And it's a brilliant way of depicting something that you know what's going on and you know what the filmmaker is depicting, and the filmmaker is doing it in a way which isn't exploitive but is using the fantastical possibilities of film to show you a situation that is grotesque, but to show it to you in a way that is actually really inventive and manageable. I think there are certain questions over the final act of the film itself, but I was gripped all the way through, and I cared about the characters, which is something I come back to time and time again. I cared about the characters. I cared about their lives. I believed in their plights. And I thought that the film was audacious in the way in which, having gone from this very sort of verite realism, when it felt the need to use another form to express an idea, it was happy to do so, and it was pretty seamless. And I think it's a very, very bold use of a kind of fantastical expressionist moment in a film which otherwise has its feet pretty firmly on the ground.